Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give you a few minutes as our attendees join us, and then we'll get started. But welcome. Feel free to drop a note to our panelists. Hello, letting us know where you're joining us from, just to get us chatting and started. We have a great event planned for you tonight. We'll just be a few moments. It looks like folks are coming in slowly. And some folks have popped on and off. So I'm wondering if folks are having some internet problems today. So we're going to give folks another minute or two. Oh, I see that we have someone joining us from Caledon. Welcome from Caledon. Glad that you could join us this evening. Okay, we'll wait just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started, but do feel free to drop a line and let us know where you're joining us from. Let us know what you're most excited about for tonight's conversation. I'm super excited to hear David Robertson talk about his book, his new book. So I'm sure others are as well. Well, folks, it's almost 7:05, so we're going to get started. I'd like to introduce myself to get us going. I'm Shannon Markle from Idea Exchange, and it's my pleasure to be with you tonight. I'd like to start with a couple of housekeeping items. Just as if we were in an Idea Exchange location, even though we're virtual, our code of conduct applies. That code of conduct was included in your confirmation email. Basically, it just is be nice to one another and be kind. The internet is a fickle friend. Sometimes it's with us, sometimes not so much. So if we have internet issues, or if you might get bumped out of the meeting or something seems to be going wrong, please know I will be working furiously behind the scenes to get things up and running again. If you are bumped off, just log back in and I will let you in as soon as I'm able. Tonight's event is a webinar, so the Q&A is opened and the chat box is open. So your chat goes directly to the hosts and the panelists. So please put your questions in the chat. We prefer the chat, it makes it a little easier for us. But if it's in the Q&A, we'll figure it out, so don't worry. David Robertson's new book is available now and is currently #6 on the Canadian bestseller list. Congratulations, David. That's exciting news. Our bookseller for tonight's event is goodminds.com. And when you order your copy of David's new book, don't forget to use the code Reading Indigenous at checkout to get free shipping. All one word and all in caps, Reading Indigenous. And then you'll get your shipping free. This offer is valid on orders between September 21st and September 30th, 2022. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment for a land acknowledgement. We're broadcasting today from the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples, located on the Haldimand Tract that was promised to 6 nations as part of the Haldimand Treaty of 1784. These peoples have been caretakers of this land for thousands of years before settlers arrived. Like many of you, I feel deeply connected to the land our community sits on. My family arrived as settlers in 1805 with the Mennonite community immigrating from Pennsylvania. When planning for tonight's event, I found myself reflecting on the idea of story, and in particular, the stories of this land. I find myself grateful that as we take steps towards truth and reconciliation, We will discover the stories of the land we all love and the people that have been here for so long. That these stories teach us, I'm grateful that these stories are going to teach us and guide us and help us learn from the inherent wisdom of our original peoples. I have the privilege of introducing our moderator tonight. Heather Majaury is Algonquin, non-status of mixed ancestry, and is the daughter of a hunter originally from the Ottawa Valley. She moved to the Waterloo region 20 years ago. Heather is a theater artist. She's dabbled in spoken word poetry, songwriting, and audio art, and has also worked in community media. She aspires to continue to develop her own writing, and she loves Indigenous literature. I think that makes Heather the perfect host for tonight's event. Welcome, Heather Majaury.
Kwe Sego, Anin, Tanzi, and hello, everybody. We are here tonight to visit online with David A. Robertson, and I'm really, really honored to have this opportunity. I'm going to be the first to admit that even though David has been an amazing, prolific writer and is out there, my life journey has just taken me in places that I wasn't aware of this book until Gabrielle told me about it. And she asked me if I was willing to moderate and sent me a copy. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. So I'm now a new fan. So I think everybody else is going to be once you talk to this person as well. I'm going to have to do a little bit of backward though and read. I'm going to have to catch up to A Story of Crows after a theory story. Oh, take me back. I'm going to have to go back from the Theory of Crows and actually then read Blackwater and then read the other novels and then go through the graphic novels. So I'm a newbie tonight and excited to be so. So David is a writer, a freelance journalist. He's the recipient of the Writers Union of Canada Freedom to Read Award. His memoir, Blackwater, won the Carol Shields Winnipeg Book Award and the Alexander Kennedy Isbister Award for nonfiction. His middle grade fantasy series, the Misewa Saga, includes the #1 national bestseller, The Barren Grounds. He won the Governor General's Literary Award for the illustrated books On the Trapline and When We Were Alone. Robertson is also the writer and host of the award-winning podcast, Kiwew, and The Theory of Crows is his first novel for adults. David is a member also of Norway House Cree Nation, and he lives in Winnipeg. So I'd like to ask David to open his window and welcome you to our conversation tonight.
Hi.
I'm going to have a little bit more tea.
It's very green tea.
It is very green. It's actually matcha. It's mixed with some nifty mushrooms, but none of the psychedelic ones. They're just regular.
Well, it's good.
Healing mushrooms.
It's not that kind of night.
It's not. I just really want to thank you for this novel. I've had to rush read it a bit. So I'm going to even go back and close read it further, but it's beautiful. And there are moments that are so deeply lyrical, but they're subtle. And as a mother, as the daughter of a hunter, of an Indigenous man, slightly different circumstances, I resonated with some of where you were going, especially the journey in the second half of the book is incredible. And the contrast between that journey and what happens in the beginning of the novel, where it's all the struggling and the anxiety with modernity, essentially, as far as all of that influx that comes in, was really great. So I really, really want to give you accolades for your writing skill, #1. But we assume that, right? That you've got pretty good writing skill. And that this is a really important book. It's an important book of its time. And it might be because I'm probably around your age too, so maybe I'm resonating that way. but it's rare that you see a book that's this sensitive and thoughtful about a father and a daughter relationship from the father's perspective. I know you did a beautiful job in writing the daughter, and I suspect that there's a lot of you in the daughter, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's very beautiful. So I don't want to say much more than that. I just want to say Good Minds Rock. So everybody who can buy your book from there, that would be really nice as well.
Yep, Indigenous owned.
And operated and close by, people. Block 2 is not too far away from the actual store. So you can always drop by there. Okay, so I was wondering, David, if you would like to give us a little bit of a synopsis of the book. I'm going to assume that most people haven't read it yet, but maybe they have. And just give us a little bit. And if you're willing to read anything from it, we would love to hear you do so. Totally up to you.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll give you a bit of a synopsis, and then I'll read a quick little excerpt from it for you. So the theory of prose, without getting into it, this you might ask this later, but the whole inspiration behind it and everything. The theory of prose is a novel told in 2 parts, but the entire story is really centered around a father-daughter relationship. The father has been going through this period of disillusion and depression and detachment. It's really compounded since he was a child, and just this kind of sense of like meaningless and trying to make sense of his place in the world and what his purpose even is on this world, on this planet, and that those anxieties, that depression, it begins to pull him away from his family, from his wife and his Claire and his daughter Holly, or Hallelujah. And at the same time, we get to see as well how that detachment and estrangement from his daughter affects the daughter. And so you get this kind of like brokenness happening on both sides of it for different reasons. Matthew, because he can't see really past himself and his own depression, and Holly, who just wants her dad, who wants her dad around. And so the anchor to it all is the grandfather. The anchor to it all is the one constant is the grandfather, or Matthew's dad. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that halfway through the book he dies suddenly, and it kind of shakes everything up. It blows kind of everything up. And Matthew decides that he's going to take his father's ashes to a lost trapline that his father couldn't find anymore, and he just takes it upon himself to find it for his dad and for himself. And Holly sees the opportunity to have a captive audience with her father, and decides that she wants to go with him. And so they go together on this journey to find this lost trapline out into the northern wilderness outside of the community. And it becomes like a journey story, both a physical journey and I think a journey to self and to each other, and so it's I really appreciated what you said about the book when you're introducing it. It is a lyrical novel, like it's a novel that's heavily influenced by music and by poetry, and I wanted to feel like a poem or a song as you read it, as much as I wanted it to be something that resonated with people, because we all have been through grief, we've all been through loss, we've all been through disillusionment, depression, or anxiety, and we have relatives that we have grown apart with, and we want to heal those relationships. And so as much as this book is like a very intimate and personal story, we can relate to that. I think that one of the things my dad used to say is, in the end, like we're all people, and we share the similarities of the human condition, and so that's what the novel's about. And I think it's like half kind of family drama in kind of a good way, like not like your typical like 1 hour, ABC drama on television. And then it's like almost like a Lost in the Barrens kind of journey story, kind of thing, where it's like an adventure almost in a way, as much as it is like this connective part of the novel where they kind of find their way back to each other. So that's a synopsis. And I thought what I would do is just read throughout the book, there's letters from Matthew to his daughter. Matthew decides he's going to write letters to Holly to try and explain to her why things happened the way that they did, and also to apologize to her for what has happened between them. And so one of the letters I thought I'd read, and it kind of explains the title as well of the book. So and it's the beginning of part 2. So this is the letter that Matthew writes to Holly. Your mushroom used to talk about the Trapline like an old friend he hadn't seen for years. He'd made plans to visit. He'd intended to visit, as people make plans to see one another, but never did. They weren't empty promises. He just ran out of time. When we got deep in the conversations, our words always led back to the land. For your mushroom, the land was the answer to everything. The trees whisper answers to any question you could think to ask by the rustling of their leaves. Your mushroom said the land remembered every foot that pressed down on its surface, every set of eyes that gazed upon its ancient beauty, every fingertip that touched its skin, every face the sun warmed, every living thing, the fish, the four-legged creatures, the birds, was an extension of the land. And when you walked onto it, you became an extension of it too. You became the land. He said you could remember the land even if you had never been there before, if your ancestors lived on it, and in turn, the land remembered you. Your mushroom used to talk about the crows. They would erupt from the trees like shards of night and circle above in a dance, these swirling lines of black. When they cawed, it would be a song. They would dance to the welcoming song. As you walked deeper and deeper into the trapline, the crows would lower, their music would grow louder, and soon you'd be engulfed by them. It would feel like night, no matter what time of day it was, but you wouldn't be afraid. I used to try to picture crows bursting from trees, flying in circles, singing a welcoming song, and dancing lower and lower until they held me in their dark embrace. It was hard to believe. Would crows do that? Would they dance in the air? Would they sing? What was the Trapline? Some kind of messed up Disney movie? Could a bird remember somebody even after years of absence? How long did a crow live? 10 years? 20? If somebody could remember the land, even if they'd never been there before, could it work the same way with crows? Could the crows remember them and their children and their children's children? Could crows pass down that recognition as well? Your mushroom never lied to me, but there were Cree legends, he told me, that I knew weren't true, that represented something else. Like, I know that Canada isn't actually on the back of a turtle. I know that Wisikajak didn't create humans. He didn't make mud out of dirt and water, mold that mud into a humanoid figure, dry it over fire, and then breathe life into it. The theory of crows seemed equally tenuous, but provable if you were to go to the place where you would be remembered. The irony of all this was that your mushroom couldn't remember where his trapline was. For all his talk of how the land and the swift water, the birds and the four-legged creatures could answer any question, remember any person, accept you as a part of it, it was lost to him. Water levels rose and changed once familiar shorelines. Landmarks fell away like broken street signs. Cabins were destroyed. Cabins were constructed. Maybe if he could have gone himself. Maybe if he could have traversed the same waterways that he did as a child. Maybe he could have found his way there one last time. Maybe he could have seen enough of the path to rediscover the place that he remembered, and it would have remembered him. A waterfall, a bend in the river, an eagle's nest bulging at the top of a thin tree like a bursting water pipe, a lake with so many reeds protruding through the surface that it looked like hair, a narrow stream no wider than a sidewalk. Maybe. Your mushroom used to talk about the importance of time. The animals had patterns that you needed to follow. And if you missed those patterns, you ate less and you were able to trade less. You would be left behind as though swallowed by the darkness and lost within it. I have never been to the land. He ran out of time, and because of that, so did I. But I know what that's like. I know what it feels like to know what home is and not be able to find your way there.
Thank you, Chimigwaj.
Thank you.
It's very beautiful. It's
Thank
even
you.
more beautiful when you hear it. So I'm actually going to get the audio book.
Well, I'll tell you a quick little story about the audiobook. So we had this really amazing actress who we chose to, and her name, I'm remiss because I can't remember her name right now, but did an amazing job with the audiobook. We picked out from a number, for I think 3 or 4 different options for the main narrator. And one of the things I wanted to do was to have a male actor do the letters. And so I got the samples by, I think, 3 or 4 male actors, and they just sounded, they did a great job, but they sounded overconfident. They sounded like, not cocky, but like self-assured, and they sounded too good. Like they sounded like, you know, they sounded like,
trained.
you know, and I was like, I heard it and I didn't hear Matthew, you know, and Matthew is broken. Like Matthew doesn't sound self-assured. He doesn't sound like confident. He doesn't sound any of those things. He's a broken man. And so I emailed the producer and I said, these don't work. Like, and she said, well, what is this supposed to sound like? And I said, well, I'll let you, I'll just record it, and I'll record one letter and I'll kind of let you know what I think Matthew sounds like. So I recorded a letter onto my voice memo on my phone, and I emailed it to Lisa Rundle. And then she's like, why don't you just do it? And so I actually did the audio recording of the letters in the audiobook. So the audiobook is actually me doing Matthew writing those letters. And I have a bit of experience there from the podcast, and I also narrated the Blackwater. So, but it was a really good experience, but it was very tough to read the letters, because the letters, more than anything, I think are like very raw and very emotional. And it's like this, you get this very huge window into his brokenness, and it was very personal and very difficult because of that to read them. But it was also, it lent itself well to the audio, because you feel, at least I think you feel the emotion when you listen to it, because I was literally, you know, breaking up when I was reading a lot of it. So
It's it's deeply personal and lovely. And even when you were reading it here, the emotional content of it is just, it lays there. It's lovely. So
thank you.
We have a question. So I have like this whole list of questions, you know, like I'm a good little questioner. But I'm going to always preference anybody in our audience who I cannot see, and I'm going to read your questions first. So keep them coming. The first question is, how much of Holly's journey to the Trapline reflects your journey alongside your dad to his Trapline?
I mean, it was a huge inspiration. You know, the journey I took with my father to his Trapline to Blackwater in 2018 was, you know, really a transformative day for us. As much as it was just a beautiful reconnection, you know, and the whole concept of like blood memory, I really understood it more than anything that day. when I stepped out onto the land and just felt comfortable and calm and like I'd been welcomed home. That's the real palpable feeling that I had. And it was a day that changed my life in a lot of ways, because it shaped my work. Like every book I've written since then has been about the land in some way, shape, or form. Like the Barren Grounds is about the land, On the Trapline is about the land, Blackwater is about the land, Theory of Crows is about the land, and in different ways. But so it has really had a huge influence on my life, and it had a huge influence on our relationship, that brief time that we had together following that trip. And so I wanted to reflect that that kind of coming together and like the healing properties that the land, I think, provides. And so in answer to the question, a lot of the journey between Holly and Matt, reflect that journey that I took with my father, in so much as the land is a character, and the land it has life, and the land provides a sense of place and home and safety, for the characters. And then but one thing that happened on that trip was my dad did mention a trapline that was lost, and he couldn't find it anymore. And it was a trapline he spent a lot of time on as a child, but he didn't know how to get there. And I kind of have an idea how to get there, but after he died, I thought I really would like to bring him there, and it was not up to me. Like my mom, he'll be buried in Melita, but I've always wanted to kind of build up the guts to ask her if I could bring just a bit of him back to the trapline and try and find it. And then because I don't think it'll happen, I thought, well, as a writer, I can make it happen in a story. So it was really the impetus for like a big part of the novel is this whole idea of like bringing these ashes home to a lost trapline and trying to find the trapline. So in the inspiration that I felt like with my dad, and the actual just experience of being there with my dad, was a big influence on the journey itself that Holly and Matt take, and definitely Holly's own journey in how she feels more connected to her father and connected to the land is reflective of my own feelings. It's kind of odd though too, because Matt's definitely like very much me, so there's way more of me and Matt than there is of me and Holly. But that kind of sentiment, those ideas and that concept and those feelings and emotions, I think that lived within me, lived within Holly as well as Matt in the book.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to use this, even though it's a different gender, but there's an umbilical cord between, I think, all three of the characters in the book, that is really clear. And it's really beautiful when you guys are also in your own narratives, you in the many narratives, when you're questioning like what is superstition, and what do you believe, and what do you choose to believe, when and how, and that conversation that you're having with the land, as well as your father, your grandfather, like both in that. It's a beautiful layering. Can you talk a bit more about that? What it was like to write in that mode?
Well, I think to me, it was like a rumination on like the meaning of life, in a way, like, and not to get too profound or too, but like, it really was me trying to work through finding meaning, and finding meaning in my own life, and trying to work through my own, depression at the time, and also trying to come to terms with how that depression had impacted my relationships. And I have 5 kids, and my wife, and I kind of removed myself from like mentally and emotionally,
Yes.
from them, and from, you never would have known it. And I think that's why it's so, depression is such a scary thing, because someone can be going through, a major depressive episode, and you would never know, and I did so many events in the fall, 2020, when Blackwater came out. And I was also just really breaking down personally. And, I don't think if you ever watched any of the events, you would ever know that. But I was, I had some really scary thoughts around that time.
Mhm.
And, and as I say that, I should say there is help, for
Hmm.
people. I think it's important to say there's help for you if you feel the same way. But for me, the things that saved my life were family, and medication,
Mhm.
and music, and and coming to the understanding that my father is still with me, and as much as I'd like for him to be physically here with me, he still lives within me. He lives within my children, his grandchildren. I can talk to him, I can hear his voice when I want to. I have notebooks where he has written to me, and written notes that I can learn more from him. And it is a very spiritual thing, it's a spiritual experience, and a spiritual acceptance, I think, to know that the people that have passed on can still be with us, and there is a bit of a supernatural element to that, as much as I think that the vibrancy and life of the land is in a way supernatural as well, so that book tries to, I think the book tries to express that all, in the story, without being didactic or too,
Yeah.
preachy, or it tries to say that through just the telling of the story. But it really was, when I wrote it, it really was an exploration of my own journey, and my own life, and trying to come to understand what I went through, and also to heal from it as well. And the book, I believe that art saves lives, and
Yeah.
and I know that because music saved my life, along with other things. And I know that I would never be so bold, or not, or I don't know what the word is, to say that my books have saved anybody. But I do know that I've received emails from a lot of people who's read Blackwater, or who've read, my young adult series about mental health.
Yeah.
And they've said, that in reading about mental health, for example, they
Mhm.
recognize their own struggles, and it has helped them. And I think that that's the thing with it as well, is and what's also a thread through this story is it does address depression, anxiety, and panic disorder in a really real way. And people who go through those things, and this is the power of story, they connect with that, and it helps to know that you're not alone, and even if you read it in a fictional character, knowing that someone goes through something like that you're going through, I think it's cathartic, and so I think, anyway, so there's a power to art that I really have come to understand more than any other time than in the last couple of years, as I've gone through my own struggles.
Did you feel that the fiction, going into the fictional mode, really helped you be able to express some of the mental health topics? Yeah.
It did. I think that me and one of my dear friends, Sheila Rogers, and we are very open about our mental health struggles, and so I've been preparing to do these sorts of things for a long time, in talking about them publicly and writing about them very overtly with things like Blackwater. And so, but I do think that setting it within a fictional space allowed me to feel more safe doing it, in the way, because this book goes very dark in some places, but places that I've been to. And so I think that it allowed me a bit of a safety net, because I was able to kind of not hide from it, but kind of insulate myself through fiction. And so it did help in that way, for sure. But at the same time, I knew that in writing this book and it coming out, that I would be, talking about mental health, among other things, with people. And I knew that I would be open with it, because I always have been, and I always will be. So it was, at the time writing it, it was that, but now I knew that it would be something I would have to address from a personal standpoint, from my own life.
Well, and I think it's a huge topic that I think many people can connect to and relate to. I just got married about 5 years ago, and so my husband proposed to me, and we both share the same anti-anxiety medication. So his proposal music was my medication. That's the song. So you're certainly not alone.
Well, that's the thing. Like, but I went through years where I felt alone. And that's what I've come to understand. And it really took me, first of all, going to group therapy to recognize that I wasn't, and then speaking about it publicly to really drive home the point, the reality, and the drive home the knowledge that I wasn't, because I realized that when I talked about it, I was connecting with other people who were going through it too, and that's important. It's important to do that, because being depressed is a very lonely feeling. Sometimes when you know that other people are feeling it, then it can be a lifeline in a way, because you should be taught. You should feel safe to talk about these things. I should say, with music, like the first draft of this book, there was so many lyrics quoted from bands that like I listened to when I was writing the book, and when my dad died, and then when Jen, my editor at HarperCollins, read the first draft, one of the things she said to me was that you can't quote all these lyrics, and I said, "Oh, why not?" Because I was just so naive, I guess. And she was, as much as I've been doing this for like over a decade, she's like, "Well, you have to pay for all this." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I had to like take out all the lyrics, except for my friend John from the Weaker Thans. He allowed me to use some lyrics from one of his songs, and then Suckin' Stevens agreed to let me use some lyrics from a song that really means a lot to me from him. But I did have to pay his publisher for that, but it was worth it. So, but yeah, so music, I tried. This book is a love letter to a lot of things as well as to music. So
Elizabeth Spurl, she's one of our audience members. She was just saying that maybe going to that darker place is what made those events so successful. So we're just kind of drawing back, which I think is a great point. She's saying you were vulnerable and open to sharing your journey and teaching others in a meaningful way, which is a lovely compliment.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it was very deliberate. So I appreciate that comment. I don't think it was a question really, but I appreciate hearing that. It's definitely a big part of the novel, and it always was going to be, but I'm glad that it has that kind of impact.
Was it weird, or not weird, but what's it like compared? Okay, so you've been writing a lot of novels for like middle age, and you've done graphic novels as well, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So that's like, what's the difference? What I'm sure you love doing all of them, so I'm not going to make you go, which one do you like better? But what's the difference? Like what in your process was different?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're definitely very different animals. Picture book, I will say picture book writing is probably my favorite. You know, as much as you didn't want to ask that, I think I find that picture books are the hardest to write, actually.
Are they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, because every word, every punctuation, everything has to be perfect. You know, and I love the pursuit of perfection, you know, like, so, you know, the flow of the story, the repetition, the rhythm, everything needs to be perfect. And it's hard, you know, on the Trapline, which is, you know, done really well for me and Julie, as well as when we were alone, which I also did with Julie, that those books are so lyrical but so meticulously crafted, you know, like at one point I remember looking at the track changes for On the Trapline on like the 9th draft of it, and there was like over 1,600, I think, track changes for like a book that had under 900 words. So it was, you know, it's a big undertaking. It's very hard, but I love that challenge. And I think the two books that Julie and I have done together are going to be around for a long time, which I'm really, really proud of. The novel writing, whether I'm writing for middle grade or for adults, the process isn't really all that different. You know, I still am a plotter, so I really plan out my stories. I've done that more recently than I did in the past. I like to know where I'm going and how I'm going to get there. There's always, you know, parts in a book that your characters kind of take over, and you have to be able to know them well enough to steer them back to where they need to be to get to where you need to go as a writer, for what you want the story to come, where you want the story to go to end, you know. But you know, the only difference is that age appropriateness. That's the really the only, like, if you read the Barren Grounds and the Great Bear and the Stone Child, you know, I think those are pretty complex books. You know, I think that there's a lot of depth to them. And the reason why I was able to do that is because kids are really smart. You know, I never underestimate this intelligence of a child. And the only thing I think about is what is, you know, the right sort of theme or message or, you know, incident or, you know, whatever it might be, like what is too much or for a child at that age to read, you know. And so with an adult fiction novel, the maturity is something I was able to address more mature themes in writing for an adult. You know, the stuff that I would write about in the theory of prose, some of it I would never write for a middle grade kid. So that's what I'm mindful of. But like, I feel like there's a lot of beautiful prose and lyrical prose in the middle grade series. I was able to do a bit more of it in theory of prose because kids can get a little more bored with less action. But for me, it was really just thematically what I could and could not write. You know, and other than that, it wasn't too much of a difference. I worked on theory codes longer than I would for the middle grade because it's a longer book. But other than that, it wasn't too much of a stretch from one to the other. Graphic novels are a whole other thing. Graphic novels are, you know, they take a little bit less to write, and you know, it's more like visualization of imagery and knowing how the images play or work in concert with the words. So it's a bit more technical, I think, in a way. So they're all different. They all require different skills and approaches, even though there's some cross-pollination. But yeah, it's but in my career, like I really, really love the challenge of trying to not only write in different forms and different genres, but to do it well, you know. And I think one of the things I'm really proud of in my career, even though I'm not like someone who really ever pats myself on the back, but like I am proud of the work that I've done and the quality of the work. You know, I think that I've been able to find some success in every kind of form of literature I've tried. because I worked really, really hard at it, and I always will challenge myself to try new things. So this book was the same thing.
I'm fascinated by your music choices. I enjoyed it. Was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that fits. This is okay, that makes sense too. But I noticed too that it was bonding. It was one part of the bonding of the daughter and the father.
Mm.
So I have a question. It's weird. You can answer it or not. If you had to pick the song that would be the song of this book, what would that song be?
Well, I'll tell you, maybe I can tell you three of them, maybe.
Okay, we'll get it down to three.
You know, so one of them definitely would be a song by Sufjan Stevens, a song called The Ascension. And that's the song that I quoted from at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
Really, really important song to me, and a beautiful, beautiful song. Sufjan Stevens is one of the most beautiful songwriters out there in the world. But there's a song by Bon Iver that I listened to on repeat the night my father died. And it's a song, I think the pronunciation would be Naeem, but it's Naeem. And again, like it's a beautiful, beautiful song, anthemic song in a way, but also like very poetic. And I listened to that song probably about 50 times the day my dad died. I was listening, I went to the Calgary airport. I was in Banff at the time. I went to the Calgary airport. My plane was delayed by three hours or so. I was sitting there like crying and trying to like make sense of my life after my dad. I didn't have my dad anymore. I didn't know how to really deal with that. And I just listened to the song the whole time I was waiting, over and over and over and over again. It somehow was like a lighthouse, in a way. And then I would say the other song would be a song called Requests by John K. Samson. And that song is just such a quiet, poetic song. And the lyrics of it are just so beautiful. And it says the things that I want to say and feel, yeah. I mean, I would cry thinking about the lyrics of that one, but like, it's if you listen to it, the lyrics are just like, they're like a gut punch in the best possible way. But those are the three songs I would listen to. That would be like the soundtrack of the book, would be those three songs.
Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, and the National is a big one too in that. But I would say like one of the things that like my daughters kind of have similar musical tastes, and it's one of my great accomplishments as a parent that they like the kind of I listen. My daughter Anna in particular, she likes the same kind of music as I do, and like my wife, famously at least in our family, hates my musical taste. So the fact that Anna likes the music that I like is like a big win for me as a parent. but we connect over it. Like we'll share, like she'll send me a song that she likes and she thinks I'll like, and I do. And she makes playlists and we'll share like music in that way. So that is really a nice way to connect as well.
I guess when I got to the second part of the book, what I felt about that part was that the two characters entered into ceremony with the grandfather, like at all levels. And just when they reached their crisis point, it was profoundly good. Like you could feel that the rapidness, the whole journey through the river system.
Mm-hmm.
And that kudos to you, because like it was good. It was really good. So I don't know if you have any comments about have you is it partly because you have a relationship to ceremony that you were able to go down into that whole place, like because you face yourself when you're on the land, you face yourself with the land. And I thought that the two characters were doing that beautifully, especially when his ribs are broken and she's saved his life, right?
Yeah. No, I just think like, it's like, I mean, you articulated it really well, but it's like the, again, I go back to this like feeling of spirituality, you know, and I think that kind of reverence for the connection that we have with the land, especially as Indigenous peoples. I think there is a deep spirituality in that connection. And that's something I was trying to articulate, even in how it may manifest itself into like, you know, maybe like a spirit bear, you know, or something, you know, like it's, you know, so, or even like in dreams, you know, and dreams are very powerful. And my dad used to always talk about how he used to feel so connected to and calm near the water. And so like the water is like the blood of Mother Earth, you know, and so like it's like flowing through her veins, and he used to call it the swift water, and I think about that term all the time. He's the swift water, and so I think there is a lot to that, and yeah, that it is like a time too of like not only like self-reflection, but like of reflection of like our of place and of community as well, you know, and that's all there. It's all laid bare for Matthew and Holly on their time there, you know, and I didn't want to live with them there for too long, but one of the things I think it was a bit longer before, but I just trying to find the right balance of enough, like I think of the two parts, but you know, it was anyway. So that makes sense. That's what I was, you know, that's how I would answer that question. But yeah, it is definitely like it's definitely like a very spiritual and resonant connection that, you know, we share with Mother Earth.
The humor that they both have together is quite lovely as well. Like the line I liked, I'm even getting really specific here, page 236. I had to do that to feel academic. Who knew getting your life hurt so much? And I just love that line because I think it is just a truthful line in the middle of what that journey was, that ceremony, all the way to get there, and their feelings of loss and their own self-critiques around which choice to take and all of that. So it was just really great journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking for some more questions, folks.
Holly was a very fun character to write. And Jen, my editor, really loved Holly. Hallelujah is her full name. People call her Holly. And yeah, she was like a lot of fun to write, and she's very like strong-willed, and she is foul-mouthed, and she's hilarious. And you know, and she's very much influenced by my older daughters, Emily and Anna, and I love her so much, and a lot of the humor of the book comes from her, you know, because Matthew's not, you know, very funny. You know, Matthew's just like a broken lump of flesh for a lot of it, but
oh, midlife crisis. No.
yeah.
What's next? So, Elizabeth would like to know what's next. Is it another picture book?
Yeah, yes. So the next book that I have coming out is in spring next year, and it is a picture book, and it's it's a bit like of nervousness for me because I've written 2 picture books and they've both been, very successful. And you can't really expect to find that level of success every release. So it is a book that I'm very proud of. And, whether it finds that sort of success or not, I think it's a really beautiful story. And I worked with a different illustrator, which was new for me too. So Julie didn't illustrate it. But it's a book that I was really inspired by the writing of Maurice Sendak, and in particular a story called Outside Over There. And I wanted to take that really kind of whimsical creepiness that in that story and almost pay homage to it, while also incorporating traditional stories of the Mimeguijuak, or little people, the Cree tradition. So it's a little people story, but it's called The Song That Called Them Home, and it's released by Tundra, and it's coming out in spring next year. So that's my next book. But next year I have the 4th book of the Misewa Saga and the picture book, and then I think something else, but I can't remember what it is at this point. But
You're very prolific. How do you do that?
Just scheduling, and I work really hard, and I have a lot to say. All my books have some sort of a message or intent to educate in them as much as I want to entertain. And so I feel like while I'm around, I want to get as much work out there in the world as possible, make it as good as I can, and to say as much as I can that I think will help build a better community, a stronger community, and so I guess, I guess I'm prolific. Like but I don't try to be. I just I always need to be writing, and I've been lucky enough to find publishers who find value in the work that I do, and who want to put my work out there, and I'm very grateful for that, and I'm very humbled by it as well. But I just have a lot to say and a lot I want to accomplish, and I want to help people in the end. That's my end goal. My dad always used to say, whatever you do, you have to help people, and so I try to live that out in my work.
That's pretty awesome. It's 7:59 here at the Idea Exchange Broadcasting Center. It's always so weird doing Zoom. I'm good with it. I like it, but we're all now television hosts, and it's always weird, right? So this has been a really, really great conversation. I totally enjoyed the book. I think everybody who is on tonight, if you haven't read it yet, please get a copy. And there it is. And you can.
Very beautiful cover.
It is gorgeous. Who did the cover?
I don't know.
Really?
A great artist. Yeah, my publisher, was very instrumental in the cover. It's a great job they did. Yeah,
it's beautiful. I thought maybe it was one of your other artists that had done work with you in the past.
Nope.
Okay. Well, there you have it. It's 7:59. We're at the end of the evening. It was a real pleasure to have you here. And I hope we get to read more and see more. I'm going to backtrack now. So I'm going to read Blackwater next. I figure I'll just do it that way.
Sure. Yeah.
It'll be like Benjamin Button reading your book.
Yeah. You can see the reverse growth in my literary journey.
Okay. I think that's, oh, no, wait, is there another one here? I'm trying to answer these as we go. Okay, no, it says, whenever you're ready to wrap, let me know and I'll come back.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And thanks, Heather. And thank you to the Idea Exchange for having me out.
Thank you guys both so much. Such a great conversation. And I'm so glad it's recorded because I know we're going to share it again and again. Thank you so much. And good luck with your book, David. We're all super excited about it for you.
Echo Zanny, thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Bye, my P.